Tom King, every series I think, well, maybe this would be the one, Eric, because this was going to be fun,
You
right?
don't think that. I try to push it on you. I'm like, I heard that this series is going to be the fun one. He's going to go back and do a heist story. And I'm like, this could be the fun one that we've been waiting for this entire time because he doesn't have a lot of heavy lifting or supposed heavy lifting to do. It's just a fun heist story. Well, we're at the penultimate issue, and I don't know what the story is.
No, and that's my favorite thing. If people will argue with us and say, well, Eric and
It's just
Jim,
a Pulp Fiction fucking gimmick to get us through a goddamn book.
hey, Eric and Jim, the problem here, because I already see some people either saying this issue is fantastic or already making excuses, already saying, well, you know that Tom King needs 12 issues to tell a story. No, and that's the problem is.
Because I read Bat Cat.
If you look at most of his stories, even like Mr. Miracle, one of the biggest ones that everybody goes, remember, those are kind of like 2 6-issue things together. You always ended up having that ending at 6.
That as well.
Well, you end up where at the end you had no idea what was going on and things got wacky and then it starts again. So this wouldn't have been any better with any more issues.
Because I still don't understand that Mr. Miracle where Funky was killed and Funky's back and Funky might be bad at times and stuff. I don't know what's happening.
People avoid talking about any of that just to say, it's trippy. Of the mind. You get away with it because everything's ambiguous.
I stopped doing drugs. I don't need trippy anymore.
When you get this, like you said, and you'll give the credits, but you end up at this point where how did it go so crazy in these 5 issues that we ended up having it a heist, a mystery. The mystery, as Tom King usually does, kind of doesn't mean much anymore. Then you throw in other things. Then you get wacky. I don't understand. And I ended up talking and kind of arguing slightly with a guy on Twitter a couple weeks ago when the last issue came out.
Take that Twitter away from you.
Because I ended up saying with the agent, the government agent, where she's always cursing. And I said, I said, this is just so annoying, this whole thing. And why does he keep doing it? And the guy says, he doesn't overdo it. It's just character work. I want to find that guy and see what he thought of this because holy crap. Then he does what we hate.
Oh, Agent Espinosa.
Yeah, Espinosa tries to make fun of that in the issue itself, but you give us the credit.
Because I'm telling you, even with this, even the last issue where I tried to say, like, I'm no, prude here. Like, I curse like a sailor nonstop. This Espinosa makes me feel uncomfortable. But we have and just Batman before you go,
the funny thing is, when we go through this and we read some things,
so you don't want to cough?
I had to, but I have nothing to drink. I'd have to run upstairs. The idea of this, though, when we go through it and we read some of the dialogue, when we do it, I'm just going to use the F-bomb. Because I don't care if it doesn't fit. That's all I did, and it made me laugh. They're the thing. When it doesn't fit, it was better.
I just skipped over it. Okay. Batman Killing Time, number 5, written by Tom King, with art by David Marquez, Alejandro Sanchez, and Clayton Cowles. And in this story where we start things off, we see that the Penguin is really up in his game in his vengeance against the Riddler and Catwoman. Because in the previous issue, we saw him go to Two-Face and say, look, I got the monies. I want to hire out all your goons. I'm going to put together as an army. Whack, whack, whack. And now we see that he has gone to everybody in Gotham, done the same thing, and even characters for some reason who shouldn't have goons or even the ideas behind it, because we spend like the first 7 pages.
Fun time, Eric.
Just going through this book saying like, at this time, this person killed this person. At this point, this person killed this person. And they're all just weird hench people of villains. Like, guys like, dressed like the Riddler. Like, how is he hiring out the Riddler goons when the Riddler doesn't seem to have goons right now? Catwoman goons. Penguin has his own goon. Firefly goons with flamethrowers. Even seems like Mr. Freeze goons, who for some reason, even though they're Mr. Freeze goons, have to put together makeshift ice guns that explode in their hands and end up killing themselves. I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me right here with these goons. And at the end, it's like, and then there was a guy who killed a bunch of people. We think he's one of the Joker gang, or he might be the Joker when he's obviously just the Joker killing people and taking advantage. But I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. And throughout all of this, and like, here's one woman who's a poison ivy fucking goon who's killing this one agent. And when like, this is the thing is, the way we're telling this story, all of this stuff is going down. It'll happen at the end of the book, but we get to see everybody die before we care or understand any of this at the beginning of the book. And then when you get there, you realize, oh, this doesn't make any sense for any of these goons and all this bullshit. And all I want to know is through the Penguin's rage, his vengeful spitefulness of like, I got to kill Riddler and Catwoman because they betrayed me. And to the point where he hired the help to go and do this. And then help's like, when I want the eye of Christ myself, I'm going to betray the Riddler. The Penguin. Does the Penguin want to kill the Killer Croc who was in on the plan in the beginning?
Who knows? We have one issue left. And when you're going through this, this is the thing. I go to read it. And I read these reviews. The pacing is top notch here. Oh my God, this shows you everything. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I get in this and I'm like, on March 7th at 5:33 a.m. in Moldorf Park, go fuck yourself. And I thought, okay, well, oh, this guy, Bill Zenowith. And now the problem is the first couple of panels when they're progressing, I'm like, oh, was that guy before? And then screw it. You end up where the one, Steve Harwood chokes Brian Patchett to death. They were saying, you see them on the bus later, but what does that mean? This is
doesn't
nothing.
mean anything.
It means nothing. And then this guy kills that guy. Oh, that guy has 3 kids.
It's just murder, page after page, panel after panel for nothing.
All I can say, I wanted to have, we go through this. If we had longer time and people would sit through it, the idea that we have calliope music going, we just read this. Oh, we're having a grand old time here. This guy gets knifed in the eye. That guy gets his head blown up. That person gets frozen.
Like, you have a problem with it in Poison Ivy. I have a problem with it here because at least in Poison Ivy it makes sense to me.
Well, at least it's part of the story. This is just shock value nonsense. This is, like you said, we've talked about it being a Pulp Fiction deal. That's the difference. The difference between a Quentin Tarantino Pulp Fiction or anything else by Quentin and other, wannabe hacks is that they only get the surface level nonsense thinking, oh, ultra violence is it. That's not it. You have to care about the characters and see what's going on to make that. I said Pulp Fiction itself, just as an aside, the reason it works is because you start to care for real pieces of shit, but then when they die, you're like, yeah, that guy's a piece of shit. And so with this, though, you're just throwing names at us. And when you do that, the pacing comes to a grinding halt. It's the beginning of the issue. How can you start an issue to make the pacing so awful? And then at the end, people, oh, it was clever because you saw that guy telling that guy a joke. Is that why you killed him?
I just imagine this whole thing where you have it playing this way, where the end of the book is at the beginning, and they're telling you all these things, where it is this ultra violent exploitation kind of way of doing things, where everybody is just dying. Just imagine Tom King writing a Quentin Tarantino kind of movie, where it's Kill Bill, and now the bride has to fight, fuck who's here to fuck's gang, because that's what it is. Every little any side character, oh, they have a gang now, and they're going to be here for some reason.
That's what it is. Here's the crazy 88. You don't need that. Also,
you have the crazy 88 because that makes sense to the story. But the thing is, you have that set up in that book, that story for that to be a thing. The way that we have all of these different goons that are here working for the Penguin, whether they work for the Riddler or the Catwoman, which doesn't make any sense for the Catwoman to have goons, but you have it. They're just all here because they're cannon fodder, and there's just to take up page space.
The way they play it up, though, Tom King is making this weird thing that they might not be the goons. They might actually be just people who are worshiping them, because even the Tweedledee and Tweedledum, they say, oh, they were real excited when they found out that I'm getting the idea that it makes no sense. Rounded up hey, let's go where all the Catwoman wannabes are. Hey, come on. It doesn't make sense because they don't have those gangs, but he just wants to have them. And what Tom King does, and that's I think one of the worst things, there's a lot that we have a problem with. If he gets an idea that doesn't work, he steamrolls that idea right in. He doesn't care. Nothing will stop him from that idea of the crazy 88s and these gangs. Even then, the best was, hey, there was an 80. Yeah, they thought the name was cool. There was always, that's what I like about that. And I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan, whether people are or aren't. But that should be he's trying to make it oh, I like the story because of that. It's just annoying.
But
plus,
even when you have the overall story outside of this gangs fighting, U.S. agents and stuff like that, it is nothing, because the whole background of the story is that the Riddler and the Catwoman have the Eye of Christ, and they want to sell it off to the highest bidder. And at this point in time, the highest bidder seems to be the U.S. government, because with all the stories going on, where you have stories that take place throughout the ages, talking about the Eye of Athena, I think it was at one point, then it became the Eye of Christ.
Yeah, that's the clever thing in this, I think.
But the idea that the U.S. government's if anybody's going to have this thing that can make you rule the world, it's going to be the U.S. government. Have you seen anybody who's ruled the world with this?
No, and I think that the play here, his clever play is just going to be, that's the deal. It's a status symbol of just having it.
It's such a weird idea where Agent Espinosa here is talking to the president, oh, you already lost that money. We can't give you any more money. Okay, well, I'm going to go to this drop. I'm going to give fake money. And if anything goes wrong, we're going to have all these freaking agents to kill the Riddler and the Catwoman. And if anything goes wrong there, I need you to fly a plane in here and drop a bomb on Gotham, because I'm the fuck is happening right here? And in the background of that, you have the Batman working with the Help, who's a freaking known murderer. And they're all just going to the Eye of Christ Christ. And the thing is,
and Catwoman's being awful. Everybody's being awful again in his books.
The biggest thing of this book that I wanted to know, like the most intriguing part, is when they're Batman and, you know, the Help are riding on the Batcycle to the place they need to be at the park to meet up with this drop right now, the exchange. And the Help says to him, so if you've had the eye this whole time, and you seem like a man of means, why would you hide the eye in a bank vault in a safety deposit box? And Batman, I'm like, I want to know this. I'm like, yes, why did you have it there, Batman? I'm like, what is it that you had to put this thing here that Ra's al Ghul gave you? I'm like, and Batman's like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, fuck. The one interesting thing you had, you just decided this is not part of the story. Better be at the next issue.
Well, some of the times when you think about it, a lot of his writing we end up saying is reaction to people saying something to him on Twitter and whatnot. And it usually does end up hitting in like the second to last and the last issue where all of a sudden we get weird comments, exposition and stuff like that. And I bet you somebody just said to him, hey, why would he just put it in the vault? He has better do something with that. But just the idea that Agent Espinosa, and she has spent the money, and she got duped. So she doesn't have the money, like you said. But she's talking to the president, and this is where me and that guy were talking about this wingding cursing. And being wingdings makes it even worse. But she's talking to the president. Does this give her character where she's talking to the president and goes, I know what the fucking situation calls for. I know what the fuck is at stake. I'm not calling because I need a fucking penny, Mr. President. I need a fucking bomb. I'm like, come on now. You are so over the top ridiculous. You are a cartoon character. And then later Riddler, because I'm sure Tom King has seen some of the criticism, he has to then make fun of it where Riddler like, man, you're like Agent Fuck. I'm like, I don't need this. I just tell me a story. Don't do this nonsense. And yeah, when you end up having the idea where, you know, the Penguin has gathered all these people, and even then he's like, my friends, fellow travelers, all these things going. Again, if you look at all the people there, you have to think to yourself, like, yeah, they can't have gangs for all these. These have to just be people who want to go out there and try to cause some havoc as their favorite. It doesn't really make sense. But even the one guy goes out and is like, I'm going to go and text my wife. I'm going to be late.
Telling you, the weird part, too, like the other interesting thing is when you have what looks like a two-faced henchman, maybe, who's at this meeting, who is then texting Batman the information of where they're going to go to the gazebo and stuff like that because he's Batman's inside man. I wanted to know more about that, but all it was like, we said no phones. Oh, I need to text my wife, tell her we're not going to be home tonight. And he shoots the guy that we said no phones. Like, who was that guy that Batman just got killed?
Who was that guy? Yeah, Batman, you know,
I thought it was like a Jason Todd at first.
And I wish that it would have been the idea that he did text his wife and Batman just intercepted it. I hate the idea that Batman sent somebody into this. Even if he knew this was going on right there, he should have been on it more than just sending that. It's very odd. But again, that just gets wiped away because most of the things in these books of Tom King, they end up, you have the wow moment, guy gets shot, but you're not supposed to think anything about it. You're not supposed to think that, who is this guy? And Batman got him killed. And he's done. He's gone. You don't, because we move on to the next deal. And now we're going to go back. And again,
is Killer Croc safe and sound in Arkham and/or Blackgate? Is he okay? Is his girlfriend okay? Did she spend all his money?
People forget about all that stuff by the time you get to this. But you end up where you have this deal in 2,500 years earlier on May 5th, 404 BC at 5:24 p.m. Is the clock time to say because of the way the shift? You end up, though, with a priestess of Athena. And this is where you get that idea that it's not the eye of Christ. This is just some sort of symbol of whatever, because we even said this doesn't make sense because it started before Christ. So you have that. So at least that's kind of explained. But even then, it's just whoever has this rules the world. I just think it's a status symbol. I just think it's something where you get that. And like I said, the joke would be you open it up and there's a mirror. Oh, my God, it was me all along. I just think that's all it is.
It's a stone eye. And I'm like, what are we doing with this? And even the idea at the end where like Catwoman tries to get away with the stone eye and the things get all wrapped up where it's knocked out of her hand when she's fighting Batman shows up and they're fighting Espinosa and stuff like that. When it just like rolls out of its box then and like it just rolls in the and we have this narration the entire time telling us, time and place and when everything's happening, but all out of freaking whack. Like we do discover, like we've been talking about this entire time, every time we review the book, that it is the Clock King.
Clock King. We knew the Clock King was involved. King
telling the story so out of fucking whack with the goddamn times that he's given,
and
but he picks up the eye.
This stuff? And what does he care about this eye? And the other play here that I thought was okay, where you end up having Constantine and he's dying, and we're talking the Emperor deal, not the
real
character,
Constantine, not John Constantine.
He's being met by Obi-Wan Kenobi, it looks like, by bedside. But this is where I got the play where Constantine ends up really realizing that as he's dying and he's converted, he can't say like, I got the eye of Athena, because now he's going to go to hell again. He's a heathen. He's like, oh, I got the eye of Christ. And that starts that.
That's where the story changes.
And it's like down the alley, the deal. And I like that. But what does that mean? What does that go with? If it does end up being at the end, which it seems, the eye is nothing. Like, and if you end up having the help, like, that's why you kept it just in a deal, because it didn't mean anything. You're right, the help.
Why did Ra's al Ghul have it this entire time and did other things before?
I think it was because he was the demon's head, and now he passes it to Batman as the symbol of, now you're going to rule the world. I want you to do it. You have to strive to be that. I just think that's all it is. But down the lane, it starts to become mystical and, oh my God, this. But like you said, that would be why that kid who dug it up and wanted to bring back his sister
stole it from the church.
He died on the coffin of a gravesite because it isn't anything. It's nothing. And it's just, but when you do that, remember the little things like the president of the United States saying, we can't let Russia get, like, are they fooled by this if that's it? Like, we can't get them doing it.
We have a handful of dead agents, a bunch of assholes dressed up like freaking, criminals of Gotham. And at the end, the Clock King just fucking picks up this goddamn eye. And that's where we end it.
What I want at the end is what you're going to have. You have that eye. And at the end, Batman goes, hey, the eye was nothing. It never was. It never will be. And then as we go, the eye blinks at us. Hey, guys, winks at What is this? I mean, at the end, when you get Clock King.
So what you're telling me is that you want a Freddy versus Jason ending where the severed head of Freddy winks at the audience to let you know that he's still alive.
But it's just the stone eye. Like, oh, I'm not. That's nothing. Wink,
How does
wink.
an eye without an eyelid wink at you, Jim?
Hey, that's why you know that it's mystical shit.
Christ.
It starts winking. Actually, then, you would say, Jesus Christ, you'd be right. It's the eye of Christ.
Yes.
This whole deal of it, though, is so much, there's not much story going on in this issue. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a lot of mind freaking everybody by throwing in
a lot of
tons
death
of
and murder.
names.
And the U.S. government willing to bomb Gotham for a freaking stone eye that means nothing. And Batman, fucking finally, he shows up. Like, he's not doing anything this entire series, Batman.
No, and that's what happens with everything of his. I mean, the idea where, oh man, this is finally my, like that Tom King had to come out and tell people, this will be my fun Batman. Oh man, it's going to be zany. It's going to be so much fun. And he can't do it. He can't even have Batman being the center of a Batman book. It's just not Batman. It's not anything.
Batman in that Batcat book.
I know. That's his deal. There was not a lot of Batman doing anything in his whole run of Batman. I mean, he was being duped by Bane the whole time. Catwoman was doing the heavy lifting. Here's Espinosa, though, and I listen to this dialogue. This is her. And in that, you have a little bit of narration, but just the dialogue of her. I like a good fucking deal, but here's the fucking rub. There's no fucking money, just fucking us and 100 of my fucking men, all of which is to say you're fucked. Fuck. That's a page of dialogue from somebody because she gets tackled by Batman and yells the F-bomb one last time. I mean, seriously? When you say that he lifts things from old fables and Christmas, I'd rather have that than this. He's wingding crazy, he is, Eric. I don't understand it. And that's the funny play of this is if he didn't, and this is, the whole deal, if he was allowed to say the F-bomb, it would be even worse. It would be so in your face that there's nothing going on here except cursing. But the cursing and the wingdings don't even, it makes you seem silly, doesn't it? When you're there, Espinosa's yelling, and it's like, really, Tom King, you're silly doing this because you know these are going to be wingdings. And yet you're still doing it. Like, what are you doing? He's like a little kid in his basement. Oh, I'm going to do the cursings, but he's not allowed. So he ends up like, oh my God, my mommy's going to see, and ends up having to change it. It's nonsense. And then you get back to this just awful killing of everybody, just describing that guy has 80% burns on his body. He's going to die in 3 hours. Later. That person ended up killing 7 people, including a father of 4 kids, but then he ended up getting emboweled later. And this guy did this. Why? Why do we care? This isn't like you said.
Embowed?
This
was it disemboweled?
No, whatever. They actually picked it up and put it right up his ass. That's what killed him. He died of dysentery, Eric.
Oh, these guys weren't doctors.
And so when you have this, the weird play, and I think that you nailed it, Eric. You plowed it. You went and said,
I did something.
You said, he can't have the villains that we want, so he has these pseudo gangs to kind of fill in. Then he puts the Joker in and says, like, oh, whatever. But having somebody, a girl running around with an umbrella gun, that's not the Penguin. Having a guy say a joke and then that's not the Joker. These are just, you just pass on by. You end up not even caring. There's no care or feel
and
about
even
it.
The idea when you have all of these people put together, the Penguin is spared no expense when it comes to putting together this army of fucking supervillain misfit goons. Like, all right, everybody, get on the bus. We're going to drive buses to a gazebo.
And then the one guy gets in, and again, you can say that this is good writing, but in a deal of a comic book, it starts to be a bit of a slog, and it takes the pacing right out, where you get this kind of stuttering guy who can't really tell a joke that wants to be a Joker guy, and he's going to tell his joke.
No, it's me.
And it ends up like, yeah, and the guy next to her says, well, don't take that, you know, to go get and tell him for standing that yourself. Yeah.
But you need to work on it, buddy.
And I'm like, yeah. And then that's the big joke at the end. You got to work on your deal. And these are the two guys that end up strangling each other at the beginning. Was he trying to tell another joke? I don't know. But yeah, you have these guys, like, that's a funny scene as they're lining up for their field trip. One of the guys, he likes the Mad Hatter. He pulls the hat down that the Mad Hatter get, and he got shot in the head there. There you go. Oh, my God, fun. Just hilarious
all those
fun.
Mad Hatter goons that walk around with a Mad Hatter
That's why
hat
I'm
on.
telling you. That's why I think that this is just wacky guys that are, it's supposed to be like, they idolize these characters. Somehow they're rounded. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
Why are Mr. Freeze goons making their own ice
because
guns
I don't
at
think
home?
they're goons. I don't think these are goons. I think that because no way are any of these villains going to allow them to go and hang out and get hired. But
that's the thing is, like we saw in the last issue, that Penguin went to Two-Face and says, I need to freaking hire out your goons.
Catwoman doesn't have goons. You know, you have Tweedledee and Tweedledum doesn't have goons, and they didn't know they did. That's the one thing that got me when they say Tweedledee and Tweedledum found out later and thought that was awesome. Somebody was representing us. They weren't a goon. They were just there to be like, hey, I'm going to fight in the name of the Tweedledee. It doesn't make sense. It really, and we're trying to make it make sense, and it's not going to because it's Tom King. It's a wow moment of this. You have Riddler guys there. They wouldn't be there. He wouldn't have had these guys hanging around and doing that. It's just nonsense.
It's just weird for Riddler to have goons right now when he's off doing his own stuff without his own goons.
But I mean, that's not a Poison Ivy goon. That's just a girl who must just like Poison Ivy and wants to cause some chaos. But where would you, what is this, an Evite? Anybody who likes to, kill people dressed up as somebody. Come on, it's just for this big wow moment.
I'm a Leatherface goon. I'm a Jason Voorhees goon.
I'm telling you, you show up, you think it's a Juggalo convention. You're there killing people and doing your thing. And all of a sudden,
I brought the Faygo, everybody.
The Faygo is like shoved into the guy's mouth and taped up so he drowns in
streets
Faygo.
Will run red with red pop.
Yeah, really, it'd be crazy. But really, if you want to ask me what this feels like a leftover idea from like something like the Jokes and Riddles. It felt very Jokes and Riddles to me. The idea where at one point they were there. Remember they had that big showdown in the park, all that. And it just doesn't
That didn't make
fit
sense
this.
either.
No, it never does. And then even at the point where Catwoman's there with Riddler and they're in this house where they've, tied up and bound and gagged things. I'm saying though, this is again the Catwoman who's doing really bad things again that he had him say that she didn't do back in the day, but now has been.
Well, it turns out the Catwoman's a liar and just a bad person all around. The one thing that we liked about her previously in Tom King's run, turns out it was just a fucking lie.
Yeah, and at least, this is supposed to be full in continuity, but yeah, it's very odd. Very odd indeed, but yeah, I like Agent Fuck that he said, and even that, like, you're joking around, Riddler's like, whoop, 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 he's getting the hell out of there. But Batman was coming with the help, and then, the help's just standing around and goes after the Catwomans and loses the eyes, whatever. But what would you, the art, here's the thing is, the art is really good, but I don't even pay attention to it because the story is so heavy with this descriptions of character names and things like that.
Well, that's the thing. I just started skipping all that and just looking at the pretty pictures because the narration wasn't telling me dick.
Yeah, I think the art gets lost in some of these. And even then,
once I was like the third page of them doing this panel after panel, people dying, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to skip ahead until we get to something.
We talked about stuff in even The Human Target where, Tom King gets some really awesome artists, but then in the script it must say, okay, draw me a empty parking lot. Then draw me one bus, then draw me two, then draw me three. That's a whole page of an artist that took a lot of time in doing that, but is that what we needed from this? Just seeing buses pull in, which we already knew. And I thought that it was a better play of when they were announcing the buses to Espinosa. Like, we got one. Oh, we got two. Oh, we got three. Like, that was better than just seeing this narration heavy deal. But yeah, what would you give it?
I like the art a lot in this. I think the story is a freaking mess. And like, there are some like, brief moments of things that I don't mind about it. But overall, it's not a book that I enjoy. One issue left. I can't wait to finish this series. So we never have to talk about it again. 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm a 4. It's a disappointment. The idea that this was going to be fun. Maybe you like seeing people get knives in the head. And
I do. I watch horror movies all the time, but it's not fun here.
Yeah, it's not fun. And also, like, did you have to explain when everybody dies that, he really is really into telling you that fathers and mothers of kids are dead. He constantly does that in a lot of the things that he does. But how are you going to feel bad about Steve Andreski? You like Steve Andreski, do you? Like,
obviously.
These are just thrown in. Rachel Stadler, Strader.
Yeah, Rachel.
Yeah, she's got a 16 gauge umbrella gun. Oh my goodness. But
Gotta give me one of those.
So that is it. That is it